Hey, welcome to Fathering Our Future, the podcast for dads. I'm Anthony Vandegrift, and I'm not the perfect dad, but every day I am trying to be better. I'm joined today by a new friend. His name is Mike Thompson. He is a fitness coach in the Nashville area. He struggled with an immense amount of anxiety, dealt with panic attacks, struggled with his mental health. But today he joins me to tell his story and to share some of the ways that we as men can take control of our mental health.
She said to me, if you keep going down this road, or, something to that effect, she said, our future kids aren't going to know their dad. And to me, that was like the gut check.
If you're a dad who wants to embrace your God-given mission, make sure you subscribe to Fathering Our Future wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also get more content on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And if you want even more than that, then head over to www.fatheringourfuture.com. Well, Mike, thank you so much for being with me. How are you doing today?
Doing great, man. I really appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, well, thank you for agreeing to be with me. I'm looking forward to you sharing a little bit of your story, because I think what you've gone through and what you've experienced is, let me say, refreshing to other guys who are going through what you went through, because you battled anxiety, panic attacks, you struggled with mental health issues. And I think there's a lot of men today who suppress those struggles that they're going through because they view it as a weakness to confess that they're actually struggling in these areas, and getting help oftentimes is perceived as this great weakness because they're not man enough to overcome these things. And I think you'll agree, and through your experience that you're going to share today, I think you'll make it plain that's not correct. That is wrong. It's okay to get help. And I think you're going to help a ton on that front. So I'm glad that you are willing and opening up to share this story. We're going to have a good talk. But before we get into all of that, right now, I believe you're a fitness coach. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing and how people can learn more about you?
Sure. No. So I'm a online fitness coach based in Nashville, Tennessee. I've been coaching both in person and online since I think about the middle of 2011. So, about 12 years, something like that. Kind of the main thing that I'm doing right now, and the main need that I have seen kind of over the years working with a lot of guys, is I help busy men get back into the best shape of their life while excelling at work and at home. And what I mean by that is I talk to a lot of guys who, they feel like, back in high school or college or their 20s or whatever, age group you want to pick, they felt like, they kind of had their health together, their fitness together, and then life happens. I've got a toddler at home as well. I'm married. Obviously I run a business, so I'm busy too. And I'm understanding, what that's like when you have all these competing priorities. You kind of tend to put yourself on the back burner. And what I found over the years, especially when I did corporate fitness and worked with some executives and stuff like that, is they tend to put themselves in the back burner, and then everything else suffers. Their work life suffers, their home life suffers, their relationships suffer, their mental health suffers. And I'm not going to say it's easy to kind of prioritize yourself, but it's definitely not necessary for all of that suffering to happen. I am a very firm believer that physical fitness translates into mental fitness, translates into, if you want to call it, professional fitness, family fitness, that getting in shape makes everything better. And so right now in my life, that's what I'm most passionate about. And that's kind of, the types of people that I love to work with and love to see those transformations, because you can, in fact, be your best, healthiest, fittest version of yourself into your late 30s, 40s, 50s. I've seen it over and over and again, it's possible. And so I just want to try to get more guys to realize that, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I think that's good too, because, I'm not in the best shape of my life, and I'm trying. I stay somewhat active enough so that, I still can fit the same clothes I've been wearing since I was in high school, but still,
Sure.
I get it. I still get that, I'm definitely not as athletic as I once was, because when I got married, I stopped playing basketball, and I used to play basketball 4 or 5 nights a week. And it was quicker. I was stronger, just greater stamina, and that stuff. I can tell it's it's dampened a little bit, but I'm curious to know um, your view on why you think for men specifically the physical fitness is so enriching and bleeds into all of these other areas. Is it just because it just feeds into this natural masculinity of, we want to be tough and we want to be strong? I mean, this is something that little boys
Hmm.
deal with. This is why playtime with our sons is so important, because
Yeah.
it lets them gauge their strength. It lets them, feel like they're growing up strong and being a man. And, there's science behind that.
Hmm.
Um, what's your view on that?
I think there is a lot to that. So, and we'll talk about this more when I get into my story. I think a lot of guys, I would say probably the vast majority, do have some kind of itch to prove themselves in some way. Maybe it's not physical. Maybe it's, again, through business or raising a big family or art or music, or I don't know. But, I think, people want to leave their mark on the world, right? And so everybody kind of has their own way of expressing that. The reason I think that physical fitness ties into all these things is yes, like we know the physical benefits of exercise reduces anxiety symptoms, depressive symptoms, obviously improves all these markers of health that allow you to be around longer, allow you to play with your kids, more, get down on the floor, get up and down, kind of keep up with the kids, as you hear the phrase that's always used. But I like to look at it also from kind of a character trait driven, a mental skills driven perspective. So if you see someone that's, you know, age honestly is kind of irrelevant. I just use ages kind of because we see fitness drop off throughout life. So generally, the older you are, you know, the the more remarkable it is when someone's in shape if they're like say in their
Sure.
60s versus their 40s. But you see these character qualities in people like that. Like, that someone's in shape, they have to be disciplined in a certain area of their life because it doesn't happen overnight. They have to delay gratification. They have to, be willing to endure a little bit of, pain and suffering just because, again, like, yeah, exercise should feel good on your joints and should be fun in some respect, but it's not always easy. And you have to keep showing up when you don't want to show up. And so, the list can just go on and on and on. And so I think that, as you develop, or the fitness is a good vehicle, to develop the mind in such a way that you can then apply those character qualities to other areas of life. So that I know that when I'm more disciplined with my eating, for instance, and I'm eating, healthier foods, I'm not, drinking a ton of alcohol, I'm, doing all these healthy behaviors, I notice that I'm more productive. I sleep better, which means I'm in a better mood, which then means that I am a better husband. I'm not snapping on my daughter. I can put more energy into my business and grow my business financially. And so it's almost like this gateway drug, if you will. Like, getting in
Yeah.
shape kind of is this gateway drug to improve a lot of other areas of your life that you may not even realize.
Yeah. Man, well, I don't know. I don't know why more of us don't do that. You just explained it so well,
Well, and
but it
here's the
makes a
thing
lot of
too.
sense.
Here's the thing. Like, when I say get back in like the best shape of your life, like, the best shape of your life is seasonal. It's like, I'm a
Yeah.
realist. Like, I'm not as fit as I was like in my mid 20s. Like, in 2020, I did an ultra marathon. There's no way I could go do that right now. Like, absolutely not. I'm thinking more holistically and being able to prioritize health when there are a lot of other things that are very important, and, tiny humans running around that are relying on you that didn't rely on you before, when you can still keep yourself kind of in check and keep yourself fit. To me, that is like best case scenario.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, and I like what you said about certain of the mental aspects that go into dealing with your fitness. For example, like delayed gratification.
Hmm.
Like, that's a big thing that goes beyond just, the physical conditioning of our body and our health.
Hmm.
But that seems like a good place to actually put that into practice
Hmm.
and actually get a sense of what it's like to delay gratification and then to see the reward coming to you after you have exercised patience.
Yeah.
Um,
And being
so
content
I,
with the process. It's the
yeah,
same thing like financially, like with investing or retirement accounts or whatever,
yeah,
whatever you do for the financial health of your family. It's, the Bitcoin millionaires, like, there's not very many of them, like that's
right.
kind of like gambling. Like, actual
Yeah.
financial health requires a lot of delayed gratification and not just buying whatever you want whenever you want. Same thing with your
Yeah.
health. If you want to lose weight, you can't just eat whatever you want whenever you want. It's
Sure.
just kind of the reality of it.
Yep. Yep. That's how it works. Even though we wish, oh,
Yeah.
I did
Oh
some
yeah.
push-ups
I do
today, I'm
too,
going to
man.
wake up tomorrow with a six pack.
Yeah. I
That's not
wish,
going to
man.
happen.
That'd be great.
Not going to happen. Yeah, it would be. um, yeah, but no, those are good points to make. I like the way that you painted that picture. I think it brings some clarity to the significance and to the importance of, you know, being mindful and being intentional about our physical well-being.
Mhm.
Let me ask you: have you been? I'll call it a fitness buff all your life, or did that start at a particular point?
Pretty much my entire life. So when I was in kind of middle school, high school, I think I did have that drive to kind of prove myself. That's funny that you brought that up earlier.
Yep.
And kind of what I aspired to for whatever reason. I don't know the exact reasons anymore, but what I had my sights on joining the military. And so I started working out when I was like 14, 15, just to, condition myself because honestly, like I am a naturally terrible athlete. Like I'm super lanky. I don't build muscle easily. Like I'm not super coordinated. I was never really good at sports. Really the only thing I was ever kind of good at without trying was running. Like I ran a lot
Mm.
in high school, but even then I wasn't like a standout athlete. It just, it just was something that I enjoyed doing. And so I did it a lot. So I got
Sure.
better at it, just like anything else you do. And
Yep.
so I always found it kind of intrinsically, or maybe not always, but I found it intrinsically rewarding. I didn't end up joining the military. I ended up going to college here in Nashville. And I still worked out, kind of off and on. I had some injuries and stuff like that. So I had some layoffs and stuff. But for the most part, I mean, I would say I've been pretty consistently active in some way. I mean, really, it's going on 20 years at this point. And
Wow.
like I said, at this point in my life, I just find it kind of rewarding in and of itself. I don't have
Sure.
big goals, like I maybe used to. Like I competed in strongman. Like I said, I did some running and stuff like that. And the police department, obviously, what we'll talk about. But right now,
Yeah.
it's just, it makes me feel good. And I'm a better human being when I get some energy out in the gym. And that's really all there is to it.
Right. No, no, I understand that part. Yeah. And kudos to you for keeping up with it for so long. Cause I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of us who probably middle school around the time we were, 14, maybe the freshman in high school. It's just like, all right, it's my opportunity to prove myself. You have to go to the weight gym. It's just a
Hmm.
part of public school. And it's just like, well, I'm going to compete with the rest of the guys here, but that tends to die off a little bit. So kudos to you for keeping that
100%.
up and, for helping other people
Yeah.
along their journey as well. But you mentioned joining the police force.
Hmm.
Um, so, you've kept up with fitness, through college as much as you could. In reading your bio, I know that you were in the top 10% of the academy and you joined the police force in 2016.
Hmm.
What did that feel like for you? I mean, I know you said you wanted to go military, but how did it feel accomplishing that and actually becoming a police officer?
Sure. Yeah. So the military thing I just touched on, I'll back up just a little bit. So I got married right out of college. I was 22. My wife was 21, which I know anymore is not really typical, but we just kind of lucked out and made it work, I
Yep.
guess, dated all through
Yep.
college.
There you go.
So I was coaching in person at the time at a few different gyms around
Okay.
Nashville. And the way I was looking at my career then was, especially because this was, 11 years ago, 12 years ago, I was looking at it as kind of a temporary thing to kind of get on our feet, just because financially it was like we were both broke. Obviously, we're young, we're just graduating college. She literally got her first full-time job the week before we got married. So we had nothing. Like our first apartment, didn't have AC. Like it was wild.
Yep.
And so I was looking at the training because it paid well hourly compared to anything else I could have been doing with the skill set that I had. And so I was basically like, all right, I'm going to do this for a couple of years, kind of get us on our feet, maybe buy a house, kind of the middle-class American dream. And then I still had that itch to, join the military or, like we call it, like do something tactical,
Yep.
um,
Yep.
but I valued my family. Like that's very, very high on my priority list. And, if not the most important thing. And so it was like, well, I'm not going to join the military because I know I'm going to deploy, because I know I'll be moving around all the time. That was just not the lifestyle that I wanted for my family. That's not the lifestyle that my wife wanted. And so it was like, this is more important. I'm not going to do that. And so I started looking at, because again, I wasn't trying to coach long term. So I started looking at, career options that would maybe kind of scratch that itch, but be a little bit more, quote unquote, stable, which it's not, but we'll get into that. And trying to do something locally. Cause I love, the city here. I love the community, and it was like, I want to serve people. And so the police department just kind of seemed like a natural thing to do. And so I went through the whole process. At the time, there wasn't a lot of stuff going on like there is today. There were like probably 4,700 applicants or something for a class of, I don't know what they capped it at, but we started with about 55 people in my academy class. And so I went through that whole process, obviously got my running in shape, got myself in shape for that, and was really mentally prepared, for this grueling 6-month academy, because they were still doing like a stressful academy, very similar to like Army basic training, where we didn't live there, but we were, getting smoked, every hour on the hour, multiple times a day, like running 6 miles in a suit, like that kind of stuff. So I was very mentally prepared and kind of hyped up to go do that. And I wanted to do well. And I did okay. Like, I wasn't the best at anything in particular. Like, I wasn't the best at shooting, and I wasn't the best at the PT side of things. I wasn't the best academically, but I was pretty well-rounded and good at just kind of everything overall. And so I remember when I graduated, it was, the double mindset of, wow, like I just did this super hard thing that I never really, there was never a doubt in my mind that I wouldn't do it, but it was definitely just like a make it to the next meal type thing. Like one day at a time, just break it down, make it to the next meal. And it's like, wow, it's finally over. Like, this is really cool. I really accomplished something, and I learned a lot. And this feels amazing. And then, kind of reality sets in.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's always cool when you actually, complete the course of whatever it is that you're doing. I mean, I think about myself. So I didn't go to college right out of high school. I ended up going to WGU online.
Mm-hmm.
I think I started in 2018 is when I officially started that, but I did it in 16 months. And now it went fast, and I knew it would go fast because
that's
I
amazing.
knew
That's awesome.
I knew I was going to do it fast. It's competency based.
Yeah.
And I know I'm not an idiot. I call myself an idiot a lot. I'm not an idiot. So I knew I would get through it pretty quick, and I wanted to get through it faster. But, while I'm doing that, we moved houses. We had another kid. Like, there was a lot that happened in that 16-month period. But still, it was really neat.
That's impressive.
It was neat looking back on that and be like, I've finished my course. Like, I'm done. Like I did it. Like, there's something rewarding in that.
Yeah. And the thing too, that a lot of people don't realize, like, then, especially here in Nashville, I think the application process for me was like 2 years. Like, it was a long, like, they fast track them now.
Wow.
Like, I know guys, I train guys that are going all the time, and they, go to the gym, and it's like 3 months now.
Oh, wow.
Because they just need people. But then it was like 2 years of waiting, and you do one thing, and then you wait 6 months, and you get an email, and you wait another 3 months, and you have to go in for an interview, and you wait. And it was just like this super long, drawn out process. And I didn't even find out I was starting the academy. We started in January. I didn't find out until 2 weeks before.
Oh, wow.
Like, they called me at work. It's like, oh, you're starting. I'm like, oh, like, I have to get my uniform. I have to get all my stuff together. I have to shut down my training business, like all this. And so it was coming out the end of that. It felt like it was kind of the culmination of almost like a college experience like that. Cause it had been so long, and kind of that goal. Like, I want to be a police officer. I want to be a police officer. I'm going to do this thing, and just head down, just working. And then, like I said, you graduate and you feel awesome. Like, go out to dinner, and then it's like, oh, great. Tomorrow night at 10 p.m. I report for, my first night shift.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's
what
quick.
does that mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're going to do a great job. Oh, it's good to know we got a bunch of rookies out there not knowing what they're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's fun, though. I'm sure it's a fun experience. But I know your tenure as a police officer didn't last too long. You were out.
Correct.
You started in 2016. You were out in 2018. And
Correct.
I know, based on your story, you started having, I don't know for sure, but you were having panic attacks. You were dealing with anxiety. Is that something that started once you were a police officer, or historically were there signs or struggles with that previously in your life?
So I think and honestly, like, going into, this whole experience, I was very not emotionally intelligent. Like, with other people, but especially myself, like I was not very self-aware
It's not something that was
of.
taught in school for us, though.
No, it was not taught to me in any sort of way, and I don't fault anyone in particular for that. It's
Right.
just not something that you do, which is
Yeah.
kind of why we're here having this conversation,
Yep.
to actually do that. So I had no self-awareness. I had, very little clue, honestly, like why I was doing things, how I felt about certain things, other than just kind of have my opinion, and that's that. So I think I've always naturally been kind of an anxious person. Some social anxiety. I'm definitely more introverted. So that's always kind of been a thing, but never to the degree that I started experiencing once I became an officer. So, like I said, I graduated the academy. I kind of have my sights fixed on, I want to become this thing. I want to do this thing. It's like, cool. And then reality hit. And I didn't even realize this until very recently, like the last few months,
Hmm.
is I think I was more, mentally focused, mentally prepared to get through the training and accomplish the thing and prove to myself that I could do it for whatever reason, than I was actually to have a career doing this. I think I had it backwards, and I think that was my biggest mistake that kind of cost me that. And so I started, obviously there's shift work involved. It's, it's a high stress job. I mean, watch the news. There's 99% of the stuff that, police officers do is not on the news.
Yep.
A lot of, I was a part of, thankfully, nothing too crazy dangerous, nothing, but there were a few critical incidents I was at, and that stuff never bothered me. It was, for whatever reason, the way I'm wired. It's like, you hear gunshots, you're like, oh, that's interesting. Like, huh,
Yeah.
I better, go see what that's about. But which I think is a good, obviously, trait for a police officer to have. But
Yep.
the thing that got me was like, because you did some training rotations. So it was night shift, day shift, evening shift, night shift. Then switch back to days for a year and then switch back to evenings. On top of that, there's a lot of court time. So you're working a lot of overtime. And then there's a lot of overtime opportunities that paid extremely well for the work that you did. Like I got paid, in 2017, $40 an hour to sit at a bank and read a book, and you literally weren't allowed to do anything. They're like, it was an office building. They're like, we just have to have you here for our insurance. Like, we don't want you doing anything. It's like, cool.
Yep.
So, I'm making, tons of money just sitting around doing nothing. It's kind of addictive. Like, you just want to go work all the time because you just like, you make all this money.
Yeah, exactly. You sound like my uncle.
Yeah. So yeah.
He was a
so
cop for
like
like 30
time
years.
Yeah. So you have all that kind of shift work, unpredictable overtime, court time, the constant fear of, because obviously like you're having to make these split second decisions, based on a lot of training. You're having to make decisions, multiple times a night, that they're going to sit and argue about in court for, potentially a couple of years, and you have to make a decision now, and that has to be the right decision, or you're going to get dragged through the mud. You're, possibly going to get suspended. Like, it's a big city police department. I'm not going to talk bad about the department, but there's definitely kind of that pressure from, whatever activists were doing at the time. Interdepartmental policies were pretty strict, on stuff. So it was like, someone complains on you for, cussing or something, like you get suspended for a day and that goes in your permanent record. And if God forbid something ever does happen, a critical incident where it goes to court, they're going to drag your record out, just drag you through the mud in front of everybody. And so I think my anxiety, whatever was pre-existing, their tendency was just amplified by that environment. It was just, I was not anticipating that, and I was not prepared just for the daily mundane grind of just kind of doing the moderate to high stress daily stuff.
Yeah.
And so I started experiencing these anxiety attacks, and I don't remember exactly when my first one was. I'm pretty sure when I was on day shift in 2017, I don't think I had too much issue with it directly. Like, I know I was definitely kind of emotionally detached at home, kind of shut down, tired all the time, just wanting to play video games, just, basically giving my best self to work, getting that massive adrenaline hit, feeling great, and then coming home and just being nothing, just existing at home, which is not obviously the place I wanted to be in. But at the time I wasn't self-aware enough to see that was happening. And so once I switched back to nights, overtime kind of ramped up, the stress ramped up. And And for whatever reason, I did not handle it well. I started having these kind of, yeah, I was anxious, like the typical things, like your palms get sweaty, you get hot, you're kind of, twitching a little bit, just kind of wanting to move around like you're anxious, kind of in that fight or flight, low level kind of feeling. But I actually started having these seizure like panic attacks. So it would basically like lay me out on the floor, like gasping for air, like hyperventilating. I would convulse. I feel okay using that word. Like my limbs would shake, my hands and feet would go numb. And this would last anywhere from about 5 to 15 minutes, sometimes at a time. At its worst, I was having 2 to 3 of those a week. Didn't really understand what was going on. It was like, yeah, I'm stressed out. Like I'm tired, like whatever, and I did have that mentality. Like, some of these other guys aren't dealing with this. Like, are they more man than me? Like, why am I having
Yeah.
this, why me basically? Like what, like I thought I was going to be good at this. And, objectively, like on the job, like I'm getting good, like performance reviews, like I'm doing the job well, like, definitely doing it to the best of my ability, trying to learn, like trying to take some additional classes and stuff. And yet here I am. And it's like, what is happening? And so, of course,
Yep.
as a guy, I go into fix it mode where it's like, okay, well, I just need to, fix this problem. And was very blessed. The department here offers a very good kind of interdepartmental counseling program that's free. So, did a couple with my wife, had a guy individually that I would talk to, and it was all basic, like symptom management type stuff. It was, well, when you have a panic attack, here's how you, mindfulness techniques to ground yourself. But we never really got into, deeper ways or things that could potentially
Sure.
in my mindset that could be contributing. So went through that, ultimately decided, I was getting a little bit better, but it made me kind of reevaluate
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
thought about my life choices, and was like the kind of the turning point for me was a conversation that I had with my wife where we didn't have kids at the time. But she said to me, if you keep going down this road, or, something to that effect, she said, our future kids aren't going to know their dad. And to me, that was like the gut check. Cause like I said, like I kind of chose this career path to scratch my own, personal itch, but also to
Yeah.
try to prioritize my family to the best of my ability over the military, from what I perceived anyway. And when she said that, it was like, yeah, I got to make a change. Like, I don't care. Like, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this for 20 more years. Frankly, I didn't think my marriage would last that long. It was like, something has
Hmm.
to change. And so that's kind of when I decided to make a big change and come back to
Yeah.
coaching.
Well, I think it's interesting. We talked at the very beginning of the episode here. We talked about how, and you elaborated on this very beautifully, how when we put an effort on our physical well-being and our health and our wellness, that ultimately bleeds over and has a positive impact on our mental well-being. And I think it's interesting
Mm-hmm.
how in your story, the inverse of that is true. So when you're struggling mentally and you're having these panic attacks and you're having this struggle with anxiety, there was a physical representation of that in your personal life
Mm-hmm.
too. Cause, uh, I mean, you put on weight, you started having back problems and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah. Yeah. And all of it was, again, stemming from my lack of skills to deal with, the anxiety that I was experiencing. So I did, with that career, I work with a lot of officers right now. And, one of the biggest struggles is like, well, especially if you're in a patrol or some kind of, unit that isn't just sitting in an office all day, you don't have access to, generally a fridge. You don't have, especially if you're at night, there's no restaurants open. So you're relying on like gas station food if you don't bring anything. It's very easy to like over caffeinate or rely on sodas and stuff. And so just kind of the weight
Mm,
gain, just if you're not hyper aware of it, it just kind of happens, right? You're just not really, you're focused on work and you're just kind of eating what you can. You're eating honestly for
sure.
comfort a lot of times. Like you go to a high stress call and then you hit the gas station, get some candy. I would do that sometimes just to kind of, chill for a minute, kind of come back to baseline before I go do something else. Alcohol obviously is a problem. Thankfully, that was never really a big issue for me, but I know it is for some guys. Over drinking on the weekend and stuff like that. I had very severe back and hip pain, and I don't know. I know that back pain does correlate a lot with like anxiety and depressive symptoms. So I'm sure that there was some of that involved, kind of like this physical manifestation, like you said, of what was going on in my head. But also, like, I remember, like, I would working out, lifting weights specifically kind of became this, prove how tough you are to the world or to yourself ultimately. I mean, no one's there watching, it's proving it to
Right.
myself type thing. So I remember, like, there was one workout I was squatting and, squatting pretty heavy. I did a set rack the bar and I had a panic attack, like mid
Wow.
workout. I was working out at home, like nobody saw it. Just, I think from that pure physical exertion, it just kind of pushed me over the edge, and it passed. And I was like, all right, cool. That's over. And I got up and just continued the workout. Just put the bar back on your back, keep going.
Wow.
And that's what I thought the solution
Sure.
was. I was not taking care of myself in the sense that I try to, coach. I was using that, physical exertion, physical fitness to kind of prove to myself how tough I was, but it wasn't from a place of like valuing myself. It was from a place of like, you suck, you can't handle what you should be able to handle. So you're going to suffer until you can handle it. And that is not, it's not good. Like looking back on it now, it's like, God, Mike, you were so dumb, but it is what it is. I'm here now. And
Exactly.
I know other guys kind of make the same
Yeah,
mistake.
well, you live and you learn, and I think that's really important. And I'd like to hear more about that from you. So you experienced the panic attacks, the anxiety. Elaborate. I know you told the story about your wife uh, telling you that your kids are going to know you, and if I understand correctly, she didn't mean like you're going to die. Because I mean, if you didn't have kids at the
No,
time, so I think she meant it more of you're going to be a different person by the time your kids are grown, and they're not going to
exactly.
know the Mike that I have married. They're not going to know the Mike that you actually are.
Yep.
And so that
Yep.
hits you. That's obviously a big effect
Yeah.
from
Like
that.
my throat's getting tight right now. Like
Yeah,
thinking about
yeah.
that. It's like,
I mean,
it's
yeah,
powerful.
yeah, absolutely. So, talk about how going through the panic attacks and the anxiety. Talk about how that affected you, but talk about what you learned from living through that.
Sure. I think it kind of, the self-awareness and kind of, like I said earlier, the emotional intelligence to understand, like, what am I feeling at this time and where is that coming from? Like I said, like the working out, like at the time I thought it was like, yeah, I'm going to be this big bad person. But now I understand, like, I was working out from a different place, a place of, I won't go as far as to say like self-hatred, but definitely punishing myself or trying to break myself of whatever I thought I needed to be broken of,
Yeah,
which was obviously not the case. So the self-awareness and, emotional intelligence and emotional management, being aware of when I'm getting worked up over something, and not just anxiety. So it's like, if my daughter's running around doing whatever crazy thing she's doing and I'm starting to get a little frustrated, before it would just be like, oh, I just expect immediate compliance and just, I'm just going to be kind of angry and
right.
frustrated. Whereas now I'm much more able to be like, okay, you're frustrated. What are you
Yeah,
frustrated about? Is it reasonable to accept her or to expect her to act like a rational adult?
no
Like, of
way.
course not. And so I think that, kind of mindset shift and that awareness has benefited me in just every area
Yeah,
of life, not just with anxiety. Along with that, um, I had a therapist who told me a great analogy. This was specifically with the panic attacks, but I think it's been helpful for me in every, in a lot of other situations too, is, when that panic attack happens and you feel yourself kind of going into that mode, he compared it to like a freight train running down a hill. And so, the harder you try to slam on the brakes or you put something in front of the freight train, you're going to cause a bigger mess. At worst, at best, you're not really going to slow it down at all. It's still going to come barreling down that hill. And so one of the most successful strategies for me to manage the attacks and just general kind of, we'll call them negative emotions in general, was like being aware of it, acknowledging it. Like, yes, I'm feeling anxious right now. That's okay. I don't need to feel good right now. I can feel anxious. And that in and of itself, in kind of this weird way, kind of flips it where you actually feel less anxious when you're okay with feeling as anxious as you're
Sure.
going to feel. Does
Yeah,
that make sense?
absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
Like
that's a
you're content with whatever, whatever emotion you're
right.
feeling. It's like, that's cool. Like,
Yeah,
that's fine.
understanding that you
I
can't
don't need to
change
feel
it.
good right now.
It is what it is. I think that's
Yeah.
huge. Yeah.
Yeah. It is what it is. And strangely enough, when you accept that it is what it is, like, yeah, you're still going to be anxious. You're still going to have problems like we all do, but
It's not going to get worse.
it's less
Yeah.
daunting. Yeah. And you're not going to beat yourself up for
Right.
feeling that way. That's the thing. Cause that's obviously like the self-critical little voice in my head is still a thing. And it's like, no, it's like people feel
Yeah.
anxious. Like that's a normal
Yep.
human thing. Like, why do you think that you shouldn't feel
Right.
anxious? Like, are you better than everybody else where you're not going to feel anxiety
Right.
ever? No, of course not. And I think along with that is just a lot of humility and being like, okay, yeah, like you can do hard things. You've done hard things your entire life. You will continue to do hard things, but that does not mean that you're superhuman. That doesn't mean that you're not going to struggle. That doesn't mean that you are, somehow less than other people or different than other people in the fact that you struggle. Like everybody's got their own problems. Like maybe you struggle differently than your buddy, but he's going to struggle
Yeah.
in other ways. So, a lot of humility, definitely brought me down several notches in the best way possible. Like I couldn't be more grateful for that lesson.
No, I think that's great that you extracted that from your experience, and that's one of the things that's usually difficult for us to do is look back on hard times, look back on trials, look back on failures, because
Mhm.
at least for me, like in the past when I messed up, I just wanted to forget about it and move on and just try to do better and not actually
Mhm.
evaluate what I did wrong, where I messed up, so I can be better prepared for the next time I find myself in that same situation. So I think it's really important that the reflection that you did is something that we're all mindful of, that we do that and we actually evaluate, okay, what have
Mhm.
I gone through? And, in your case, you had a therapist also that helped. That's another thing that I think is really important.
Mhm. I've had
Yeah,
several.
it's like it's not bad to
Yeah.
have a therapist. It's not bad to have counseling. It's not bad to talk to people because
Mhm.
I think about with counselors specifically, they always just take you back to the source of the problem and then work with you from right there.
Mhm.
The earlier you start, the easier it is to get to the source. Like it just if you have a problem, get
Mhm.
help with it. And I think it's really important. You talked about the self awareness that you gained, and you talked about dealing with your emotions and emotional management, and just the fact that you identify that you have emotions. I think as men sometimes we get stuck in this idea that women are
Mhm.
emotional and we're not, and we do have
Mhm.
emotions. We might not be as
Mhm.
emotional, but we definitely have emotions. And especially when you become a dad, holy smokes, you get way more emotional. That's something that
Yep.
I experienced. It's just
Oh,
like,
dude.
wow, what? I was like watching a movie one
Yeah.
day.
Like, how is
Yeah,
this
I'm watching a
possible?
movie one day that I've
Yeah.
watched before, and I'm like, oh my god, that's so touching. Like I can't cry right now. It's just like all of a sudden, it's just
Yeah. Have you, I know you've seen it. You've seen Coco,
yeah, yeah,
that animated
yes,
movie. Well, dude, so Alice is on a kick. Alice is my daughter. She's 2. She's on a kick with that movie. Wants to watch it every single
yeah.
day. Dude, like it took me probably 20 or 30 viewings of that movie to not cry at the end.
That's funny.
Like I don't, and it's like this real touching father daughter thing is the ultimate
Yeah,
story, right? And so it's like, yeah, they're pulling all the right
right.
strings, but like, yeah, and I cried when she was born, whenever she was an infant, and the first time she ever like made eye contact and locked
Yeah,
eyes with me, like I was a
yep,
mess. Like it was in the best way. Like, and I have, I think that's completely normal, and I'm glad that now I think whatever generation you want to call us is fathers are more involved and more open about talking about
yeah,
those things with their kids, because it's so important. And
yeah.
it's,
Yeah,
it's
no,
amazing.
I think you're right. I think there is definitely a shift in the culture with fathers, and I'm glad to see that
Hmm.
because I think a lot of the problems that we have dealt with have been, and I don't mean this as a slam to our fathers or our grandfathers, but just because of the environments that they had to grow up in, the things that they went through, it was you have to be rough and you have to be tough, and that carried on
Hmm.
through us. And times have changed a little bit, and so trying to be rough and tough is not always
Hmm.
the solution. It's not that you can't be rough and
Yeah,
tough.
it is a solution. Like I get it. Like I was a police
Yeah.
officer. Like there was a time you had to be
Right.
violent. Like that was just what you had to do. But what they always told us is like, you're nice until it's time not to be nice. And then you're nice again as soon as it's time to be
Yeah.
nice again. And that served me
Yeah.
very well. Like I had pretty good rapport with most suspects, even ones that we had to fight and chase and do all those
Right.
kind of things, just because, you know when to turn it on and when to turn it off. And I think that was, without going down that
Sure.
rabbit hole, I think that's probably something that has been lacking in the past, is that kind of, it's time to be tough was always
Right.
on, because it had to be.
Exactly.
You just look at, the past 100 years.
Exactly. Yeah.
And now it's like, yes, you need to be able to, like, men need to be able to do that. Like, I feel like lifting weights and training is a way to express
Yeah.
some of that and kind of bring that out. But that is not appropriate when your 2-year-old daughter wants to watch
Sure.
Coco.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't work.
I'm gonna do some push-ups with you on my back while you watch Coco, because it's the only way I know how to.
No, I'm not watching
Yeah.
that kids
Yeah, exactly.
movie. I'm watching Terminator. Like, no, like,
Yeah.
shut up.
Exactly.
Watch the movie.
Exactly. So talk to me, because you talked about, ways that you deal with these things. Let's talk about some of the practical things that you do, that you've done, that help you with the help you improve your physical and mental health. What are some things that you do that other guys could actually do?
Sure. So obviously, training physically in some sense, has been kind of the constant throughout my entire life. Obviously, we talked about at one point I was using it unproductively. So it's like, it's a tool, right? You can use it correctly or you can use it incorrectly. And so, working out, toward meaningful goals, and not necessarily, when I say meaningful goals, I don't necessarily mean, oh, I have to be 8% body fat, or I have to have a 6-pack, or I have to run a marathon, or like, those things are good. And I think there's a lot of utility in using that kind of thing to motivate yourself. I've used that plenty of times, but it's a tool in the toolbox. So like for me right now, I work out to, for my joints to feel good. Like I like getting stronger, seeing the progression in the gym. But I definitely train differently than I used to, just because I want the workouts to build me up. I want to feel physically good. And the other thing that I've noticed too, especially with, the way I'm training right now, is like when you go into the gym, you're like, all right, I want to target this certain muscle group. I've selected the exercises to do that, in a great way, whatever. It's almost kind of like a moving meditation. Same thing with like trail running. When I did a lot of trail running, it was, I tried to train a lot without headphones and stuff like that. And it was very much kind of brings you into the moment, brings stress down from the rest of your life, and kind of helps you just focus on what you're doing right now and not worry about all the other problems. Like, my example was like, I go run some 400-meter sprints. I don't care about my other problems because I'm literally just trying to breathe, like that's an extreme example, but there is something about getting out of your head and into your body that I think
running is good
helpful.
for stress.
So that, yes. I have in the past, I have had, a simple kind of mindfulness meditation practice. Absolutely nothing spiritual about it for me. It was literally sitting there and focusing on my breath, for 5 or 10 minutes. Same exact purpose as the training, kind of with the added benefit of you learn to sit there and you learn how fast your mind is going at all times and how fast thoughts are just in and out. Like it's really hard to focus on your breath for 10 breaths. Like try it. Like it's very hard. You'll be thinking about something else. You'll be like, oh, my back hurts or my elbow hurts, and boom, you're just, you're all over the place. And so learning kind of to sit with your thoughts and just let them come and go, and then translating that skill into your everyday life, oh, I'm feeling frustrated. Why am I feeling frustrated? You get kind of curious about that stuff, and you don't necessarily like get lost into that emotion and the dial gets turned up, I think sleep is huge. And I'm a realist with myself and my clients with this. Like there's no, like we know research, get your 6 to 8 hours, whatever. Like we understand that, but we also understand that like life, kids, work, like you have responsibilities. You want to, like I was talking to one of my clients who's a police officer, and, he works these weird shifts, and the only time he can spend with his wife is if he cuts into his sleep. And I'm like, you know what? That may be a higher on your values list, and that may be more important, and that's okay. Yeah. Like we have to understand, kind of the trade-offs, but it's not right or wrong. I do know for myself that when I am intentional about going to bed at a certain time, about, doing the sleep hygiene things like trying to stay away from screens, an hour before bed, make sure the room's cold, dark, I sleep better. And when I sleep better, I'm more productive at work and fitness wise and with my family. Like, I'm easier to talk to, I'm more present, I'm more active with my daughter. All of those things, when I get, say, 6.5 or 7 hours of sleep, which is pretty average for me, versus nights where I'll get like 4 or
Yeah.
5 hours. Um, so I'm a realist. Like, I get it. I'm not perfect. I don't get 8 hours right
Yeah.
now. But I don't think
Yeah.
that's realistic, but I think all I'm trying to say with the sleep is I'll sleep when I'm dead is a terrible motto.
Yeah.
You'll be dead
Right.
sooner. Like,
Yes.
like, you have to elevate some of these things higher on your priority list, and you have to understand how it benefits you. Because, like, if it's just like, oh, I need to sleep more so I'll be healthier, like, that doesn't really mean
Sure.
anything. But if it's like, I need to sleep more because I'll be less anxious and I'll be more active with my daughter and have a better relationship with her, this is my
Right.
example. It's like, oh, I'm going to
Yeah.
bed. I value those other things, and so I'll take this action that maybe I don't want to
Right.
do because it supports
Right.
these other things. And then the last thing I think, from things that have helped me personally, is just like what we're doing right now, is just talking through it with other guys, like hearing other guys' experiences, talking about my own experiences, kind of processing things, because I think the more self-awareness that I have, just with my own things, I can maybe help my friends more. It's like, hey, you're going through this, like, are you feeling kind of like this? And they're like, oh my God, yeah, I never could articulate that. But since you said that, it's like, yeah, so it helps multiple things just to be more aware of what your own
Yeah.
mind is doing.
Yeah. I think those are great things to do. Um, Let me ask you, what do you think? What do you think most guys struggling with these things or struggling with their personal fitness? Where do they mess up in the business of life? What's the main stumbling block for? I'm going to say us.
Yeah. And I've seen this over and over and over. By far the number one thing I see guys doing that is tripping them up with their own health and fitness, and by extension all this other stuff, is either trying to do too much too soon, or kind of having this all or nothing mentality, where guys will be like, all right, I'm getting in shape, and they go to the gym, 6 days a week. They find, whatever crazy workout program they want to do, take your pick. There's millions of them, I'm sure. They start dieting super hard. It's super restrictive. So they immediately diet. They're 100% keto, and they just do that immediately. And so they're, making their own meals and eating separate from their family. And, it's just, and that works obviously really, really well in the
Yeah.
short term. In the long term, it actually causes more harm than good, because what you start convincing yourself as is like, okay, if everything is perfect and my diet is, 100% super strict, like take your pick, whatever the diet is, like really restrictive, and I'm doing all this stuff in the gym and I'm always sore and I'm always beat up and I'm just hitting it hard, like, yes, I'm good. I'm going to be healthy. And then the first thing that comes along, where like you miss a workout because your boss has you stay late, or like with my police officers, like you get held over all the time. So, or you get called into court, the morning of, and you have to miss your workout or whatever. And they're like, oh, I missed a workout. And then this negative self-talk starts, where it's like, oh, well, I missed that one. I might as well, I'm going to start again tomorrow. I'm going to get back on the train tomorrow. So they kind of, eat like crap the rest of the day, maybe have a couple
Yep.
drinks, wake up the next day, feel like crap because the previous day they kind of let loose, and they're like, oh, so maybe they'll make it back to the gym, maybe not. And then you just kind of start this downward slide where they're just like, I can't stick to this diet because it's too restrictive, so I'm just not going to do anything at all. Or I can't stick to this workout plan that I have that has me 6 days a week. I can only go 3. That's not good enough, so I'm going to stop. And I hate to say, because when I talk to guys about like starting, I like the Dave Ramsey debt snowball analogy, where like you pay off your smallest debts first, and that even if the higher interest debt is like you're paying more interest, you start that snowball effect with the small debts, because every small win builds on the last one. It's the exact same thing with anything you want to change in your life, especially with fitness. It's like literally I tell people like, all right, go for a 10-minute walk. Like that's your first homework. And they're like, what? I'm like, just trust me. Like because when you take action and you succeed, you do the opposite of that all or nothing approach. You start building this belief in yourself and in your ability. So, you start slow, you start with things that your body can handle. You're not as sore, you feel good, you feel more energetic, and you're changing just little things at a time rather than worrying about, oh, I've got to do, this laundry list of things. And then it's like, you get a couple months into it. It's like, oh, wow, I've lost 10 pounds and I didn't even feel like I
Yeah.
was trying. Like I see it all the
Yeah.
time. And it's like, yeah, like you don't have to go on this crazy restrictive diet and work out 6 days a week. Like you're shooting yourself in the foot if you do that. You're actually
Yeah.
harming yourself. That is by far like the biggest thing that I see from guys. And the other one kind of goes along with that is most guys don't want to get any social support. So, regardless of whether or not you have a coach, it's like, yeah, you'll work out with your buddy every now and then maybe and just kind of have some healthy competition. And that's cool. But like most guys, especially in, 30s, 40s, 50s, tend to be pretty solitary, not a whole lot of friends, and they're just kind of doing things on their own. They got a family, maybe their wife, there's competing priorities as far as feeding the family versus eating the food that he feels like he
Yeah.
has to eat. And so he just kind of like puts his head down, and it's a real solitary sort of thing. And that generally, like, we do better when we have support from
Yeah.
other people. Like that's why like things like support
Yep.
groups are so helpful, or, just having drinking buddies or whatever. Like you have this social support of people who are kind of like-minded. And when you get around people that are just a little bit ahead of you, maybe it kind of
Sure.
elevates you. Whereas if you're just around people who don't really
Yeah.
care, it pulls
Yeah.
you down. And it's much easier to be pulled down than pull all
Yeah.
them
Community
up.
is a wonderful thing. It gives you that sense of inspiration, like you
Hmm.
talked about, with people who are a little bit ahead of you, just to show you what's feasible, what's possible. Um, there's
Hmm.
so many benefits with community.
And gyms are great for
Yeah.
that. Like any good gym, like meet people. Like don't just, I'm kind of guilty of this, but like don't always just put your headphones in and just kind of put your head down and go
Yeah.
to work. Like look up and meet people, like spot people. Like I've pretty much all of my friends, um, with like two exceptions, like we used to play music together in college. All the rest of my friends have been through something gym
That's cool.
related. And like I always tell people, like people get intimidated and stuff. Like, listen, like that big bad dude at the gym, like that you think is like, there's no way you could ever look like him or be as strong as him or whatever. Those are the nicest
Yeah.
people, like, because they're like anybody
Right.
else. Like they want to talk about what they're passionate
Right.
about. And so they will, I've seen it over and over and over and over. Like they will bend over backwards to help you. Like I've experienced that when I was a kid, and even in college, like they will help you in any way possible. So never be afraid to be like, hey man, like you seem to know what's up. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you help me out today with, my arm workout or whatever? Like they will. And if they don't, frankly, you don't need to be
Sure.
friends with them. Like you don't want to
Yeah.
be around that person anyway. So
Yeah.
who cares?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. No, I know exactly what you're talking about. I go to church with a guy. He's older. He's probably 50s ish now, but used to work out all the time. I mean, he's big still, but he used to be just this monster. And man, he loved when guys in the youth group would come to him and be like, "Hey, will you train with me?" Like he ate that up. So, in asking
Yep.
those other guys, sometimes you might not realize just how much you're actually benefiting them as well. So, it's a two-way street. But
100%. And like every time I'm in the gym, even just if I'm just there myself, not in any kind of professional capacity, it's like somebody, hey, we got some new leg machines at the gym recently. Like, hey, can you show me how to use this? Like, absolutely. Like 20 minutes, like
Yeah.
just gone. I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't care. Like it's not even about like my business. It's about like, this is what I like
Right.
to do. It's
Right.
fun.
Right. Yeah. And man, I have to go back and say I love what you said, mirroring that snowball approach, because you contrasted that with the gung ho. I'm just going to get out. I'm going to do it. I'm going cold turkey on everything right now, and I'm Mr. Olympian diet starting this moment, and that always fizzles
Yep.
out. That always just fades away, and
Yep.
then there's just regret and disdain and just bitterness that usually forms in its place. But
Mhm.
starting and doing things that are actually manageable so that you can create a lifestyle where you're worried about your wellness
Mhm.
rather than just trying to fix a
Feeling
problem.
good.
Yes.
Building
Yeah.
yourself up, not like I'm going to diet because I'm fat and I
Right.
hate myself. Like that, like it may get you started. Like that negative emotion may be what needs to push you over the edge to get you
Right.
started. So it is useful. It's like a
Sure.
tool, like anything. Like it's useful, but you can't
Yeah.
stay there. Like you have to at some point transition to like I said earlier, like this is benefiting every area of my life. I see how it benefits every area of my life. And I am a person who deserves to have a
Yeah.
good life. Like it seems so simple, but I don't think a lot of guys
Yeah.
believe that. And so understanding that, internalizing that, and be like, okay, so because I'm a person that deserves to have a good life, I have some health problems. I can improve those. Like it doesn't mean you're like pie in the sky and you're not a realist. Like if you need to lose 60 pounds and get off your blood pressure medicine, like that's a very
Yeah.
real need. Like, yes, but you cannot do it like, oh, I've been a terrible person because I haven't taken care of myself for the
Right.
last 20 years. Again, that will get you started. But now it's like, now I am taking care of myself. I'm a person who cares about my health and cares about taking care of myself. Therefore, my actions will reflect that.
Let me ask you a couple more questions. First question I
Sure.
want to ask is, from where you're at today, speaking to other guys who might be in a similar situation that you found yourself in a few years ago, or speaking to your younger self when going through all of those things,
Mm-hmm.
what can you leave to that guy?
I think what I would tell that, 5 years ago version of me is honestly one of the things I just said is like, you don't deserve to suffer like this. It's not necessary. You're not proving anything to anyone. Like no one cares in the best way possible. Like you're free to do, to take care of yourself. You are, by refusing to face these things, this is the tough love part of it. It's like by refusing to face these things and make a change, because what you're doing is not working. So why would you keep doing it? By refusing to make a change, you are actively hurting both yourself and everyone around you. You're hurting the future version of yourself. You're hurting your family. You're hurting your friends. You're hurting your career, obviously, because it's unsustainable. So whatever mindset that you have has to change in some way, because it's not working in the real world. That's the tough love part of it. It's like whatever you think you're doing, or whatever preconceived notion you have of being manly or tough or whatever, it is not working in the real world, which means that something's off.
Yeah.
If it was true, it would be working, but it's not.
Yeah.
And so that like I said, the humility piece in that is kind of it's a big hit. Like it's painful.
Yeah.
Like I went through that and I'm still going through that, in some respects. So I'm definitely a realist in that. It's not an overnight sort of thing where you're like, oh yeah, the guy in the podcast said this and he's right, so I'm going to, change all these. It's a process,
Right,
like
exactly.
it really is kind of a process, and you have to be willing to do the work, and you have to be willing to be really uncomfortable for an extended amount of time.
So what is the first plan of action that you would give outside of the mentality shift? Is the first plan of action, start going to the gym? Is it start seeing a therapist? What would be the first step that you'd advise someone to take?
So something I do with my clients, we have a couple different ways of doing this, and this is very well based in research as far as, changing habits, starting new habits, stopping bad habits, action-based type stuff. Yeah. The prerequisite to that is like, yes, if you need to talk to a therapist, find a good one. There are a lot of bad ones. I've had bad experiences. I've had good experiences. Like I said, I think I've been through 4 or 5 at this point. So like different things for different seasons. Just because you don't vibe with one doesn't mean you won't vibe with someone else.
Sure.
So definitely, research, talk to people, pay for some sessions, like figure out, who is going to be able to help you the best. But as far as like what I do from a fitness perspective, it comes down to, why are you wanting to make whatever change you're going to make, and your own like self conception or your identity, how you see yourself. So I know this is like really kind of heady or whatever, but so an exercise I like is called the 5 whys. So basically you're just asking yourself why you're doing something 5 times. And by that 4th or 5th time, you're going to get at the deeper reason of why you want to do something. So, an example for me is like, why do you work out? It's like, well, I want to, stay in shape and be healthy. Why do you want to be in shape and healthy? Why is that important? Well, at this point in my life, I want to be a good example for my daughter, and I want to live a long time so that I see, everything that she does, and potentially her kids and all these sorts of things. Like, why do you want to do that? It's like, well, ultimately because I love her. I want the best for her. Like I said, I wanted to set a positive example for her, to give her skills that I didn't have growing up. To take care of herself, having some of these, self-understanding, both mentally and physically. And, I think that's 3, maybe 4 whys deep. That's way more powerful than, oh, I should work out because I think I should be healthier.
Yeah.
Like if I just, oh, I should be healthier. Like, well, why? Who cares? Lots of people don't care,
Right.
like why do you care? And no one can tell you what that reason is.
Yeah.
It may literally just be, I don't feel good about myself and I want 6-pack abs so that I start to build some confidence. Like, that's fine. Why do you want to be confident would be the next question. Right. But it's different for everybody. And so the second piece to that is identity. So there's a lot of different ways of doing this. The overarching theme is just why, or who are you? How do you see yourself, and what does that person do? So if you don't see yourself as a healthy person or as an active person or whatever, you're not going to do the things that active person does. That's just not how you see yourself. So you have to dig really deep and find the ways that, whatever this person does that you want to do. So like, I want to be healthier. I want to be active. I want to, lose weight or whatever it is. What does that person do? And how do I kind of shift my self-image into more like that person? Yeah. So the easy way to do that is to look for other areas of your life where you may demonstrate some of those things. So, if I want to be a healthy person, maybe I'm overweight and my blood pressure is a little high, but, I go for walks with my family, or at whatever it ends up being. Like, look for actions that you've taken in the past or that you're doing currently that reinforce that new identity. And then, like I said before, build on it.
Yeah.
So what does an active person do? Well, an active person probably doesn't sit around watching 4 hours of Netflix every day. That person might, go for a 5-minute walk in the evening after dinner or something like that.
Yeah.
Could be anything.
Yeah.
And then you start with those small manageable pieces, start doing that. And then over time, again, your self-conception starts to change. And you're like, I'm not that person that sits around and watches 4 hours of Netflix every night. I am the person that goes and does these other things.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of self-perpetuates. Like, it just you just kind of do it because it's how you see yourself, and it's more automatic.
Yeah.
So that is probably not the answer that people are expecting, but it is the foundation for everything that you're going to do. Yeah. So like I said earlier, like start small, go for little walks, do something at home, get your kids involved. Do 5 push-ups with the kids, every commercial break of the show or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
But little stuff like that is how I would start. And then the main thing is to find something that, if you don't enjoy it, at least you don't hate it. So like, some people just despise running, so don't go run.
Yeah. Like,
some people, like CrossFit. I don't particularly, but, join a CrossFit gym, get around a community. That's great. If you, like bodybuilding style workouts, go get in the gym and, do a little bit of bodybuilding type stuff. It's, if you want to do a triathlon, that sounds appealing. Like, talk to someone who's done it and get involved there. Like, the thing that's going to help the most is understanding why you're doing something and then doing stuff that you enjoy. Yeah. Like, there's no mandatory sorts of activity. Like, I do think that we have good evidence that everybody should be doing some kind of strength training and everybody should be doing some kind of cardio. But those categories are so broad, like, it looks completely different for each person, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to fit somebody's conception of what, a fitness person does.
Yeah. I think that's good. I think you've given a really good, logical, and cohesive presentation on how to go about changing yourself if you're dealing with these mental issues or physical issues, and then just laying your life out in the right way. I love the 5 whys. I've never heard of that. And I think that that's an incredible idea, because what why ultimately causes you to do is pinpoint what you value.
Write it down. Like, it's surprising, man. I've done that several times with several different things. You're like, what?
Yeah.
Did I just think that?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. No, it's a great exercise that I would highly recommend, because why causes you to see your values, and what values
Hmm.
ultimately do is give you your priorities. And so if you're looking at
Hmm.
everything that you do, well, just because you've asked yourself these questions and you've, done it so redundantly, and you've actually forced yourself to answer, well, now you've laid out, this is who I really am. Like, this is what I
Hmm.
really believe, and this is what I really
This is what
enjoy.
I value.
So
Yeah.
I need to structure my life in a way that actually makes sense. Like, I don't need to buck against the system that I have inside of me. Like, if
Mm-mm.
I enjoy this and this is what I care about, why the heck am I doing all these other things that give me anxiety and frustration?
Exactly.
Yeah, you
Exactly.
give it.
Stop beating your head against the wall and
Yeah,
everything aligns up. And
yeah,
it's, and that, right. I'm glad you brought that up, because that right there by itself alleviates, some anxiety.
yeah,
Is like, if I'm living according to, the values that I hold dear and my actions line up with that,
yeah,
you can be frustrated. Like, you can have bad days like everybody else. But at the end of the
yes,
day, it's like, well, like I ask myself at the end of the day, I have reminders that pop up on my phone and stuff. And it's like, um, one of them is, you're never going to get this day again, act accordingly.
yeah. It's good.
It pops up in the morning. And that to me keeps me centered, because it's like, it keeps me clear on my values. It keeps me clear on, am I spending my time in ways that support those values? And I get to the end of the day, it's like, well, maybe I didn't have the greatest day for whatever reason. Um, but at the end of the day, did I live according to these values, and
Yeah,
did I kind of be the person that I want to be? And the answer is yes. It's like, well,
yeah.
you're winning.
Yeah, absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think it's really important to just give a little attention to the fact that, yeah, there are failures along the way, and that's
Hmm.
okay. Like, there are bad days. The way that I like to talk
Hmm.
about discipline is that discipline is, it's more about everyday effort. It's not about,
Hmm.
you know, did I achieve my 5-year goal in 5 minutes? Like, no, like,
Yeah.
we give ourselves these expectations that make zero sense sometimes, because we want change, but we want it now. Like, going back to that delayed gratification
Hmm.
that we talked about at the very beginning of the episode, um, everyday efforts make a big difference, and I think that's really important for us to get through our head. Um,
Yeah. You have to fall in love with the process,
yeah,
because you got outcomes and you got processes.
yeah,
The outcomes, in my world is like, I want to lose 40 pounds by Christmas or whatever.
yeah,
It's like, oh, cool. And the question I was like, that's a great goal. That gives you something to shoot for. It's very concrete. That's great.
yeah,
The question I asked is like, well, what if you lose 39 or 41? Are
yeah,
you still going to be happy? Well, you love how you look.
yeah,
So it's like, you can't fall so in love with the outcome, because it's ultimately not under your direct control.
sure,
What is under your direct control is the process, which is what you're doing each
yeah,
day,
yeah,
which is why I harp on that so much. Like, you do the right actions
right,
consistently and long term, the outcome just kind of happens.
right,
And when it happens, you're like, oh, yeah, that's pretty cool.
yep.
And then you keep moving on, because it's just a part of who you are.
Yeah, and I think the journey of life that we're on and the journey of fatherhood, I think they're directly related to each other. But I said just the other
100%.
day that, fatherhood, it's not like a marathon. Like, yeah, it seems like a long time, but there's not an end to fatherhood. We stop being a
Hmm.
dad when we quit. And I think that's how
Hmm.
life goes. The journey of life ends when we are dead. We're
Hmm.
always on the journey. We're always in the process, and that's just the way that it is. Let me ask you my final
Yeah,
question.
sure.
I know we haven't really talked a ton about, engaging with our kids and fatherhood, directly, but we've said a lot that deals with fathers and men's mental
Hmm.
health and physical condition, and how they can, relate with their kids and play with their kids and all those wonderful things. But
Hmm.
um, I know you're a dad of a youngster. What's your best piece of advice to give to dads today?
Mm. I think, and this is not my own thought, I don't know where I heard this.
Doesn't matter. Go for it.
Yeah. um, I'm if we're going to talk about like the five love languages that a lot of people are familiar with or something, I'm kind
Yeah.
of like a quality time kind of guy.
Okay.
Um, uh, I think with kids, like I have been, and again, she's two. Like, I don't claim to have a ton of experience with this, but at the beginning, I was definitely hyper fixated on having quality time with her, like as much as possible. And obviously, I still believe that's important. Like, you have to have these carved out times when we, like, for example, like every Tuesday morning, since she was basically born, I've taken her to breakfast. Now we'll go to the park or something like that, play a little bit, and then I'll take her to the nannies for a couple hours. So that's kind of one of our quality times. We go to breakfast as a family on a Saturday. That's another thing that we do very consistently, that we've done since, but even before she was born. um, But I think my perspective on quality time has changed a little bit. I think it's just time.
Yeah.
So if you're laying there, if I'm laying there with her on the couch and she's watching Coco or whatever she's, wanting to do, just me being in the room and being present
Yeah.
accounts for so much, even if it's something that seems super mundane.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, we're watching TV, we're watching the same movie we watched 30 times in a row, but I'm still here. And, when she gets to the point where we could have a conversation, an actual conversation, it's not just toddler babble.
Right.
Like we could have that conversation. The door is open.
Yep.
Whereas, I think in the past I was so focused on like, oh, we have to have these specific times and specific experiences. And I do think that's important. But for me, it's much more just now, just being around, just being available and being willing to, shut down what I'm doing that's not as important as her, and just be like, yeah, we can go outside and play for 15 minutes. That's fine. Like I'm not, it doesn't have to be this big thing. She's not going to remember, the vast majority of these little moments. And honestly, I probably won't either,
right.
But it's all those little building blocks of the relationship just that accumulate over time that you don't even realize.
Yeah. She won't remember the little moments, but she will remember that you were there. And
Exactly.
that, I think, is the big thing.
Yeah.
It's so true too. And, when I view quality, what you described, I would define as quality time personally.
Yeah.
Just being there and being present. So just the other night, my oldest daughter, Reagan, she's the most emotional, and she's the middle kid at this point. So like, I understand that there are things that just come along with being the middle kid, and she always feels like she's on this conquest to have time with us. So, we try to be mindful of that. And the other night I had to go to Home Depot to get some stuff, and I took her with me just to go to Home Depot. We didn't go on a daddy-daughter date. She still called it that. She still thought of it in the same way. We didn't go eat. We didn't go get ice cream like we typically would, but she went with me to Home Depot. She jumped around. She carried the cans of wasp spray that we had to buy, and she had the time of her life. And just including our kids with us and being mindful of them when they're there, it's such a game changer. So yeah, I echo exactly what you just said. This has been a great conversation, and I think everyone listening is going to want a little bit more from you. So why don't you tell us how we can connect with you, either on social media, if you have a website, let us know how we can learn more about you.
Sure. So it's pretty easy to find. Instagram is the main kind of social media platform that I'm active on. You can find me just at MJT Training. You find me on there. I post pretty much every single day. Most of it is kind of fitness and mindset related content that you will find useful. Like I poll my followers and like draw stuff from my clients that I talk to. So it's all very practical, down to earth stuff. I don't do the whole like influencer thing or like skits or anything like that. It's all very, very, very actionable, type of stuff that I try to, no nonsense that I try to post. And you can feel free to send me a message on there. That's a really easy way to contact me. I respond to all of my messages on there. Website is mjttraining.com. You can see kind of a little bit more about what I do and kind of my story on there, client testimonials, that kind of thing. But honestly, like Instagram's kind of where it's at. So find me on there, follow me and send me a message, say hi, and say, that you found me through the podcast. I would love that.
Very cool. All right. So that's MJT Training. Yeah. And that's like training, TRAINING.
Yes.
So make sure you check Mike out on Instagram, check out his website. If you're interested in, the fitness coaching, he does that. He's going to do it online. So I'm sure he won't tell you no. He'll be there to help you, especially if you're a first responder. In the conversations that Mike and I have had, because he was a police officer, I know he can better relate to you if you are a first responder too. And I know he talked to me about his struggle sometimes with people who just didn't understand that reality. So, if you were a cop, are a cop, firefighter, whatever it may be, Mike's probably a good guy to go to. So check him out on Instagram. Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. I want to recap one more thing that I couldn't help but recap in the interview itself, and that is the 5 whys that Mike talked about. I think this is such a profound exercise for us to do as men. Think about why you want to do what you want to do and probe yourself. Be the annoying child back to yourself. Why? Do that to yourself and try to do it up to 5 times and pinpoint what really matters to you and why you're really doing the things that you're doing. Because when you ask why, you determine your values. And when you know what you value, then that's going to influence your priorities. And whatever you prioritize in life is where you're going to spend your time. So if you will ask yourself why, and you'll really identify what you value, your priorities will reflect those values, and your time will also be focused on the things that matter most to you. So probe yourself like an annoying 3-year-old, ask yourself why, and then start spending your time on the things that matter most to you. Well, this is Fathering Our Future, the podcast for dads. I'm Anthony Vandegrift. Thank you so much for being with me, and I hope you will join me next time. Thank you again for listening to Fathering Our Future. If this episode has served you or you believe it will serve another dad in the future, make sure that you leave a like, a comment, a review, or share this so that it can reach another dad. And so that you don't miss out on another episode, make sure you subscribe to Fathering Our Future wherever you listen to podcasts. And again, for more great content, head over to www.fatheringourfuture.com.